Hello guys, so chapter 4 of Pugs of the Frozen North, and Shen and Seeker are off to try and rescue the pugs, aren't they? So, up the steep slope behind the Po of Ice they went, puffing and panting, pushing the heavy sled ahead of them. They soon grew hot, despite the cold. Seeker pulled off her mittens and hat and let the snowflakes settle in her hair. There she is, look. But it was all worth it when they reached the top of the headland. From there they could see the pugs out on the ice. The heap of little dogs under their coverlet of jumpers looked like a knitted tent from the distance. They climbed onto the sled beside the dog food bin and Seeker pushed off. The sled went swooshing down the headland's flank. Its runners threw up great fans of powdered snow as Seeker leaned this way and that to steer it around rocks and frozen bushes which loomed up in its path. Whee! Shouted Whee! She shouted. Wah! Screamed Shen. There they are, look. The cliffs at the headland's edge were drawing closer, but Seeker knew the headland well and she had aimed the sled at the place where the cliffs were lowest. They weren't really cliffs at all, more like a stony step, and the sled shot over it, landed with a thump on the sea ice and kept going, slithering between the frozen waves almost all the way to the camp. The heap of pugs heard them coming. 66 small specks bounced and yapped upon the ice, wagging their wiry tails in welcome. "These are the dogs," said Shen. "Where?" asked Seeker, looking around. Those are dogs." The pugs had caught the scent of dog food. They crowded round the sled, yipping and whining, wagging their tails. Shen opened the dog food bin and shovelled out scoopfuls of kibble. Soon the yapping was replaced by crunching. Look at them there. Shen looked around at them happily. Then he looked behind him. Seeker was sitting on the sled. She had her head in her hands and she was crying. "What's the matter?" he asked. "Oh!" went Seeker. Tears trickled down her face and dripped off her chin and froze before they hit the ice, where they landed with tiny plinking sounds. "Ah!" she said. "When you said you had 66 dogs, I thought you meant proper ones." These are proper ones," said Shen. "No, they're not. They couldn't pull a sled." "Oh," said Shen. Now he understood. So that was why she had wanted to come and see. So that was why she had wanted some of his dogs. He looked at the sled, the bigness of it. It needed a team of huskies to tow it, not a team of pugs. "I thought Grandpa could enter the race after all," sniffled Seeker. "And now I shall have to go home and tell him it's hopeless." "What race?" asked Shen. "The Great Northern Race," said Seeker miserably. "When true winter comes, the teams arrive from all over the north. They will race through the night forests and across the frozen sea, all the way to the Snowfather's palace at the top of the world." Shen scratched his head. He remembered the charts he'd seen on board the Lucky Star. The North Pole was just a patch of bare paper so big and white it made him want to get a pencil out and draw something, anything on it. "There isn't any place at the top of the world," he said. "There is if it's true winter," said Seeker. "That's where the Snowfather lives, and he grants the wish of the first adventurer to reach it." She sighed. "Grandpa almost won it when he was not much older than me. Such stories he tells about the journey, and he's waited and waited for true winter to return ever since. He kept this sled and bred the best team of sled dogs in the north. But true winter only comes once in a lifetime. The dogs got old and died, and Grandpa got old too, and soon he'll die. And now true winter is here at last. And when you said dogs, I thought you meant proper dogs. I thought Grandpa would be able to race after all, and I'd go with him to the North Pole and see the Snow Father. But these are just toy dogs. Shen isn't happy, is she? No, they're not, said Shen. Just because they're tiny, it doesn't mean they're not strong, brave or loyal. And I have leads for all of them. I bet they could pull you and your grandpa all the way to the North Pole easily. Seeker didn't look as if she believed him. So he ran and fetched the sack of leads which was still lying on the ice where the lucky star had gone down. He rushed back and started clipping the leads to the pug's jumpers and knotting the other ends to Seeker's sled. He was very good at knots, having grown up on a ship. The pugs caught his excitement and started to yip and yap and dance around, straining and pulling at the heavy thing he'd hitched them to. 10 pugs couldn't shift the sled at all. 20 couldn't. Even when 30 were attached, it didn't budge, and Seeker said, "See, they just aren't sled dogs. This is hopeless." But when 40 dogs were tied on, the big sled stirred and slid a few inches over the ice. When 50 were attached, it started to gather speed. When the 66th was in position, Seeker shouted, "Mush, doggies, mush!" and it took away as speedily as any normal husky-powered sled. It whizzed over the frozen waves, throwing up fans of powder ice each time it turned. The pugs were getting used to running on ice. They kept tumbling over each other and getting their leads in a tangle at first, but they soon sorted themselves out. And by the time Seeker had circled the pile of jumpers 6 times, the sled was running straight and true. She grinned at Shen, her face all rosy with cold and happiness. "It must be the best sled ever. Can I really take your tiny dogs to the North Pole?" Shen felt a bit unsure about that. He hadn't meant to give her all the pugs. He was really going to miss them. But Seeker had saved them, and he didn't want to make her cry again. So he said, "All right." "I can't wait to tell Grandpa," she said, and she took a spare lead and cracked it in the air above the pugs' tiny heads like a whip. There they are. 264 tiny paws patted on the ice. 66 little voices held, "Ow!" and the sled set off back towards the land. Let's find out what happens to Shen and Seeker and the pugs tomorrow.